Now, for more on some of the questions raised by the arrival of Kosovo refugees in Canada, we're joined from Toronto by immigration lawyer Max Berger. Good morning, Mr. Berger.
Good morning.
I guess the question many people have now is when these 5,000 people arrive, what happens to them?
Well, Mark, these Albanian refugees will be arriving on minister's permits. A minister's permit is simply a document that allows the holder to stay in Canada at the pleasure of the government. Every minister's permit has an expiration date, and when the document expires, the government can see fit not to renew it. Therefore, it's reasonable to expect that many of these refugees may wish to attain permanent status in Canada and thereby make refugee claims. According to Canadian law, anyone who is on Canadian soil is entitled to make a refugee claim and have their claim heard by the Immigration and Refugee Board, which will determine whether that person is a refugee or not. If successful, the claimant can then apply for landing or permanent resident status, which is usually a formality. The Minister of Immigration has been sending out signals that she may wish to fast-track these refugees. This is an option that was exercised back in 1991 and 1992 when there were many Yugoslav refugee claimants in Canada following the breakup of the former Yugoslavia. The Immigration Department instituted a special program that allowed these refugees to apply directly for landing and thereby bypassing the regular refugee hearings procedures.
Now, when you say that's a fast track, give us a time frame, an idea of how long it would take for these people then.
In theory, it would take approximately 1 year, but there are, of course, the usual medical and security clearances, and the matter might be lengthened by virtue of the fact that many, if not most, of these new arrivals will be undocumented. And the Immigration Act does provide that it is a requirement to have satisfactory identity documents prior to landing.
Now, Mr. Berger, you have more experience in this field than I do, so I'll put the question to you. Yesterday, the Immigration Minister, Lucienne Robillard, was saying she expects most of these people will want to go home. But what's your experience? I mean, why would these people want to go home when they've come to such a safe haven as Canada?
Well, exactly. And I suppose Ms. Robillard, Mr. Axworthy, Mr. Eggleton have expressed the view that this conflict may be over in 3 to 6 months and these refugees will want to go back to Kosovo. Of course, we do not live in a perfect world, and it's reasonable to assume that many, if they have the opportunity, will want to exercise that opportunity and get permanent status here in Canada.
Now, your experience, you were mentioning this has happened in 1992 when there were some people coming from Croatia. How did that process go?
Well, it went quite smoothly. Most of the refugee claimants in Canada at that time were ethnic Serbs. And once the program was put in place, it was a fairly smooth transition, and these refugee claimants were allowed, again, to bypass the usual hearings procedure before the Refugee Board, apply for landing. Typically, after 1 year, they had their record of landing in hand.
Now, there are some concerns that some of these people are being separated from their families, shoved on planes and removed from the region, perhaps even some of them against their will, people who don't want to go as far as Canada. What do you know about this selection process, and how willing are these people to come here to Canada as opposed to just going to anywhere else?
Well, I understand that the minister is employing certain selection criteria, being, first of all, voluntary arrivals, individuals with family links to Canada, the elderly, the most vulnerable. But certainly families should never be separated, although it is a situation of war, and that may be inevitable in some cases, but wherever possible, those selecting refugees from abroad should select intact family units.
Briefly, Mr. Berger, from your experience and from what you've seen so far, is Canada prepared to handle these 5,000 refugees?
Mark, this is a big country, and Canadians have a big heart. In my view, we could even take more than the 5,000 we've already committed to.
And that may well happen. We'll be following that story. Max Berger, thanks so much for making time for us today.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.